The winner of the first Survivor competition is Rich.
In the summer of 2000, Richard Hatch was on top of the world, experiencing fame and fortune unlike anything he could ever have imagined. 6 years later, however, he was living behind bars. In May 2006, Hatch was sentenced to 51 months in prison for failing to report earnings from his $1 million Survivor prize. In a press release issued by the U.S. Department of Justice following the verdict, Assistant Attorney General of the Justice Department's Tax Division, Eileen J. O'Connor, said, "Our nation's federal tax system is not a reality show to be outwitted. It is a reality, period. The Department of Justice is working vigorously to vindicate the interests of law-abiding taxpayers. Tax cheats will be found out, prosecuted, and punished." The troubles for Hatch just kept on piling up from there. As it turned out, he had also failed to file income from TV appearances he made after winning Survivor. The first season of the show was a worldwide phenomenon, which meant that Hatch ended up in high demand after the show came to an end.
Whatever it takes to win here is the point.
Between 2000 and 2001, he made over $320,000 for radio appearances, according to the U.S. Department of Justice, but he didn't file any taxes on this sum. He also failed to file taxes on nearly $28,000 in rental income and $36,500 in donations to his charity, Horizon Bound. Along with his cash winnings from Survivor, Hatch was also awarded a Pontiac Aztek, valued at about $27,000, which he also neglected to pay taxes on. All told, Hatch was ultimately found guilty of failing to report approximately $1.4 million to the IRS. Although Hatch was found guilty and served time in prison, he has always been adamant that CBS, the broadcasting company that airs Survivor, was supposed to pay the taxes on both his win and his many TV appearances after the show ended. During the trial, Hatch's lawyer, Michael Mins, argued that he should have been considered a CBS employee, which would have made the network responsible for his taxes. About a year before the trial began, Michael Mins said, "He was under the impression that they were either going to withhold from the check or pay the tax, and apparently neither occurred." On top of that, Hatch himself claimed, "I'm being used as an example, as a scapegoat, and I'm innocent. This is nothing more than their effort to use my notoriety to get other people to pay taxes." CBS, however, argued otherwise. A statement issued by the company read, in part, "Richard Hatch was well aware of his obligation to pay taxes on his Survivor prize money." Obviously, Hatch's arguments failed to convince the jury of his innocence, as they found him guilty. Yet, in the years since serving time in prison, he has claimed that something more sinister put him behind bars. Hatch believes that the members of a jury were rooting against him because he is an openly gay man. During his first appearance on Survivor, Hatch was open about his sexuality. In many ways, this was monumental, since it was rare to see an openly gay person on television at the turn of the century. Without a doubt, this led to backlash and criticism from some fans of Survivor, but was the jury really homophobic? In an interview with the Daily Beast in 2024, Hatch claimed that his openness about his sexuality devastated his life, insisting that this was the real reason that he was convicted. He said, "I didn't anticipate it. It's the reason I was prosecuted. I could go into details, but you wouldn't care now, about the homophobia and the prospective jurors writing homophobic slurs, and the judge refusing to even let us question jurors about it. I mean, it was crazy that happened." Richard Hatch had made his first return to the world of Survivor long before his crimes were uncovered.
People are a little bit paranoid, and that's a good state to have them in.
Airing in spring 2004, the 8th season of the show, known as Survivor All-Stars, saw him compete against a number of other returning players. Since he'd been the first winner of the series and one of the most popular contestants at the time, it made sense for Hatch to return for All-Stars. His return certainly suggested that his relationship with CBS had not yet soured at that point in time. Still, things didn't go his way on Survivor All-Stars. In season 1, Hatch had employed a fairly unusual strategy to win the season. This time, though, the other contestants knew all about his antics, and he ended up being the 4th survivor to be voted out. Even before his legal troubles, Hatch's behavior on Survivor had made him something of a controversial public figure.
Making a deal with Rich is kind of like making a deal with the devil.
While competing on the first season of the show, Hatch would often walk around the camp naked. He once told Us Weekly that this was, in his words, a strategic decision. In Survivor All-Stars, Hatch took this up a notch by competing in a challenge naked. During an immunity challenge in the 5th episode of Survivor All-Stars, the castaways had to brush against each other while walking across a narrow balance beam. A nude Hatch pushed his body against fellow contestant Sue Hawk, who later appeared to have been traumatized by the whole experience.
I was violated, humiliated, dehumanized, and totally spent, Jeff.
Hawk also claimed that Jeff Probst and the show's producers weren't handling the situation properly. Although Hatch was voted out in the same episode, Hawk decided to quit the game. In 2019, years after the episode aired, Hatch took to X to deny his fellow contestants' feelings. He wrote, "I never learned about Sue's concocted story until months later. She made it up after I was gone, and I maintain nudity is healthy and natural. Nobody on All Stars could claim my or others' nudity was a surprise. We all signed up, literally and legally, to deal with it." Richard Hatch was released from prison in 2009, but he didn't stay free for long. In fact, he was only out of prison for 2 years before he was sent back. In March 2011, Hatch was sentenced to an additional 9 months in prison for failing to refile his taxes from 2000 and 2001. The fact that he still hadn't complied with the IRS appeared to prove that Hatch hadn't learned his lesson. This is precisely why U.S. District Court Judge William Smith thought it was necessary to sentence Hatch to additional time in prison. In court, he told Hatch, "You don't have the option of engaging in this type of game or negotiation with the court. It needs to be a severe punishment. That's the only thing that will deter you in the future." At that point in time, Hatch reportedly owed more than $2 million to the IRS. His debt had increased substantially in the years after his original trial. Clearly, his troubles weren't going away anytime soon. Despite his many legal issues, Richard Hatch always seems to have been more concerned with his Survivor legacy than anything else. After all of his controversies and criminal convictions, he believes that some of the producers are trying to erase him from the show's history. In an interview with The Things in 2024, Hatch claimed that other people wished he was more involved in the current show, adding that this lack of participation isn't by choice. He added,
"That's about behind the scenes stuff between Mark Burnett and Jeff Probst and me."
He went on to suggest that Probst and the producers had treated him unfairly, before implying that the root of the problem concerned both his sexuality and his atheism. Airing in 2020, Survivor: Winners at War was a monumental season for Survivor and for reality TV in general. For this season, 20 previous winners from the show's history were brought back to compete against each other, but Richard Hatch wasn't one of them. Building on his belief that he is being erased from the show's history, Hatch claims he was cut from Winners at War just 2 days before it started filming. Speaking with The Things, he said,
2 days before shooting, they dropped Tina and me. And I think that was Probst's decision.
In an interview with Us Weekly, Probst defended himself, explaining, "I think we called every single winner about returning." As it turned out, he also didn't think Hatch would be a good fit for the show. Probst went on to say, "The bigger consideration was, where is the show now? And do these 20 winners represent the show today? In that sense, we didn't feel that Rich fit into the equation." Clearly, though, that wasn't the only factor. He also added, "I didn't feel comfortable having him out on the show and representing a show that is for families." Given his past comments, it's obvious that Richard Hatch has some kind of beef with Jeff Probst. He's even gone so far as to blame him and other Survivor bigwigs for his own misfortunes. Speaking with 2Fab in 2024, Hatch said, "I have no idea where I stand with the franchise, but there are the folks, Mark Burnett and Jeff Probst, for example, who have acted incredibly irresponsibly with respect to not engaging with me and not correcting their own kind of mistakes that could have prevented my family and life from being devastated." Hatch admitted that he has never missed an episode of Survivor, but also said that he hasn't been happy with some of the more recent seasons. He said, "I think Jeff is particularly responsible for problems with the show, and I don't think he gets it. I think, frankly, he's just not bright enough to understand why viewers are drawn to the show." Despite his many controversies, Richard Hatch has appeared on many other reality TV shows over the years. He undoubtedly has a larger-than-life personality, and his outspoken nature makes him a great character to watch on television. No surprise, then, that he seems to show up in a brand new show every few years. Since competing on Survivor, Hatch has appeared on shows including Battle of the Network reality stars, The Apprentice, The Biggest Loser, and House of Villains. House of Villains is the most recent reality show that Hatch appeared on, but just like in Survivor All-Stars, things didn't necessarily go his way. Hatch came in 10th place during the show's second season. He was the second contestant banished.
I'm not going to miss anybody here. Christ.
So yes, he's considered a Survivor legend, but Hatch's time as a reality TV champion has long passed. Even though Hatch has twice served time in prison, he still owes a significant amount of money to the IRS. In fact, his tax bill has only continued to grow over the years. According to Bloomberg Tax, Hatch's tax bill stood at $3.3 million in 2024, and the IRS certainly hasn't forgotten about Hatch's outstanding debt. The organization even put a lien on his sister's property, believing Hatch transferred ownership of the property to her in an attempt to skirt the law. Reflecting on Hatch's many legal troubles, Malia Haskins, VP of Estate Planning at national RIA firm firm Nepsis told Wealth Management. When Hatch became the winner of the first season of Survivor, no one likely envisioned that 24 years later, he would be found liable to the IRS for more than 3 times his winnings from the show. The Hatch case is an extreme example of how awry things can go if a U.S. citizen fails to report all income as required.